Hey YouTube, Pocky here, and I wanted to talk about an interesting topic of Battlegrounds, and that is fun. And why Battlegrounds is not fun. You might say, what? I thought you were going to talk about why it's fun. No, I want to talk about why Battlegrounds is not fun and how we can fix it, or how the devs might be able to fix it. So, the first thing that I want to talk about is RNG. I think the biggest issue right now that players have with having fun is all related to uncontrollable RNG. So that manifests itself in a few ways. One of those ways is matchup RNG, right? Which hero you match up against and on what turn and what your ability is to control that. Now, matchup RNG, we have very little control over, right? The only real method of control that we have is manipulating our health total if there's a ghost in the lobby, but that's not the norm and really not what we should be playing around. So we'll sort of say that we don't have any control over matchup RNG. One of the heroes in the game right now that really highlights the problem is Lich Bajal, right? Lich B, as it's more commonly known, because you can take a lot of damage early. You can take 15 damage relatively easily on turn 4 if you have a bad matchup into Lich B, and there's not much you can do about it. It's one of those sort of no agency things that exists within Battlegrounds, because Lich B has a mechanic that allows her to level very quickly, get high tier minions before any other hero normally would be able to, and the game just isn't really designed to accommodate that sort of damage. Another issue that we have is fight RNG, right? And this is related because how it manifests itself is damage, right? All fights have outcomes that can shift one way or another. Sometimes it's a coin flip. Does this attack this way? Does it attack that way? You can't really inherently change too much of that in the game. You can get rid of some things that have random effects, but random isn't inherently bad in this game. But what is bad is when it feels like there's not things that you can do to control it. That's why something like the Inquisitor White Mane card felt really bad, because it took things out of your control by creating taunts that you didn't have. And taunts are one of the ways that you can control fights. Wind Fury is one of the ways that you can control fights, right? Tech cards are helpful because they give you ways to control and impact fights that influences those percentages, right? All the decisions you make should influence those percentages, and that is a good thing. Now, what is hard is playing around certain things like Ghoul of the Feast and summons like Reborn Coiler or Eternal Summoner or Colossus of the Sun, where these summons, depending on a 50-50, you can be looking at huge amounts of damage. Or if Coiler spawns really good units versus really bad units, those types of things have huge swings in damage, right? And the damage is what makes it feel bad, because, okay, if you lose a coin flip, but you're losing 5-10 health, that's one thing. But if you lose a coin flip and all of a sudden you take 25 damage on turn 9 because, you know, someone else died and someone high rolled and you got bad matchup RNG, and then the fight didn't go your way and the coiler busted out a ton of damage, that feels really, really bad, right? And so I was thinking about this concept of like, okay, these are the things that's making the game feel bad. Lich B feels really bad. These summons and flips, you know, Cyborg Drake, Colossus of the Sun, some of these new minions, Ghoul of the Feast, just make it feel like there's a lot of damage happening early. So many times I see the 3 drops, you know, in a really early mid game, just doing so much, right? Bronze Warden, a huge, you know, card that in the past, you know, yeah, it was good for that, but it wasn't overwhelming, right? Because it was kind of just Bronze Warden's thing. It's low stats, but you know, it lingered. It would do that extra 3 damage with that remaining body that just survived so often Ghoul of the Feast really like amps that up, right? There's a lot of 3-drops that, you know, you're just picking up tons of 3-drops and summons and rat packs, and they're getting tons of value. And that summon damage does so much when you add it all up. And all of a sudden you see someone that's just leveling and having a good time, and they're trading well, and they're doing damage as they're going to 6, and they pick up these 6-drops that do a ton of damage, and it feels bad. It feels bad, and that's an important thing that needs to be addressed, because you want the game to feel good. That's how you bring in the players. So my thoughts are to, as I often say, steal a bit of a page from TFT. If you guys don't know TFT, it's Teamfight Tactics. It's probably the main competitive auto battler that competes with Battlegrounds. How damage in TFT works is games are much more stable, because the damage has a different formula based on where you're at in the game. So basically, the damage that you'd take on turn 3 versus turn 5 versus turn 7 versus turn 9, etc., would change, right? And it doesn't necessarily need to be those benchmarks. It could be turn 3, 6, 9, you know, whatever. Where there's sort of in essence, the damage cap scales over time. And that's something that I'd really like to see experimented with in Battlegrounds, as a scaling damage cap, or limiting the damage that comes out of summons. And that's something that's not a new idea. It's not a new concept. In the past, I was against sort of equalizing and making all summons deal 1 damage. That's one of the suggestions that's been thrown up for years at this point, because those comps were supposed to be able to have damage to be able to end the games. But with the acceleration of the game, with things happening sooner in terms of getting high level cards and heroes getting stronger and players getting better, and the just general power creep of the game, the damage overall has really ramped up. And that's why we see armor sort of trying to alleviate that, but it doesn't alleviate those high spike damage turns that happen when you have bad matchup RNG or when you have bad fight RNG. And so having a damage cap or reducing some of the summon damage could be a way to help that, or just maybe making the damage of someone's tier like half, right? It only goes up on odd tier maybe, right? So like if you're on Tavern tier 2, you're only doing 1 damage on your Tavern tier. There's a couple ways that it could be addressed, but I think damage is a really, really big thing that needs to be addressed in Battlegrounds right now. The other thing that I think needs to be addressed in terms of the fun of the game is heroes. Heroes and I guess the vanilla base mode, but I'm hoping that'll change sooner rather than later. Obviously, they have quests, buddies, Dark Moon prizes, all in the arsenal to bring back and try and get away from vanilla Battlegrounds. But the hero selection feels really bad right now, because some heroes are just, simply put, still not fun. That doesn't mean they're not necessarily good. You can have good heroes that are boring. You can have bad heroes that are boring. But right now, there's so many heroes in the game that it just feels impossible to get some of the fun heroes sometimes. And remarkably often, you're just matched with 2 or 4 bad hero picks that you're not really excited or enthusiastic to play, and you're more excited about the game ending and moving on to the next one. That's not a feeling that you want to promote within the game. And so hero balance probably needs to be touched up a little bit. Balance not necessarily meaning where a hero finishes. Lichbee is not the best hero in the game, but it is almost for sure the most frustrating hero in the game. And so that is, something that probably needs to be addressed sooner rather than later. And the other heroes probably need similar treatments, not necessarily to impact their placement rate, but to impact how fun they are to play. fewer stats heroes, more dynamic heroes, a hero rotation. So, you know, when a hero is rotating, you have purpose, right? You can know like, hey, I'm going to get this hero offered more often. Whereas it is extraordinarily common to go weeks without playing a hero simply because it's either not fun or good enough, or you just don't get offered it. So those are the things that I think are the biggest issues with Battlegrounds right now. I'm curious what you guys have to say. I have a lot more, but I want to keep this video pretty short and concise. And so let me know what you think down in the comments below, what you think would make the game more fun, and what is the least fun bit of Battlegrounds for you right now and how you'd go about fixing it. I'd love to hear. Maybe you'd change my mind on some things. Maybe you'd reaffirm some of my beliefs. If you like some of this content, please be sure to subscribe to the channel as well. It helps a ton, and we'll see you on the flip side. As always, peace.